Welcome to Writings, Chats, and Friends. I'm Ken Weene. With me today, my wonderful co-host, Monica Brinkman. And then joining us today, a very special guest, my brother from a different mother, Augie Garnier. Augie is one of those people who truly make my life better. And we met on Facebook. We have met in person. He is one of those exemplars of people that having met on social media, I did get to go on and actually meet in real life. And he was even more charming, more wonderful. I have only one negative thing to say about Augie, and that is that he still hasn't come out here to Tucson to visit me.
Very big brother.
But hopefully he will. I thought today we're going to be talking about happiness and success. And I was looking through some of my poetry, and I came across a poem I wrote some time back, and it just resonated with this topic for me. So I'm going to read it today. It's called That Kid. What the heck is that kid doing in my memories? Why is he climbing rocks, unafraid of falls and skinned knees? Why is he running and playing rough, little hooligan? Doesn't he understand the rules, manners, polite society? Shouting that way and calling names, arguing, fighting. What a terrible way for him to behave. He must be told to shine his shoes, take a bath, and change those dirty clothes. I must be on the way to school or the library, perhaps an errand at the First National, some milk, a loaf of bread. Children have better things to do than run about. Why, look at him, no cares, enjoying life, an urchin, his mind filled no doubt with jokes and thoughts of girls. Irene, the girl I liked, and was too afraid to tell. That kid's not afraid. He'll pick a flower from a neighbor's bed to give to her, and she will smile, just the corners of her mouth, and whisper, thank you, in a way that will keep him in dreams for a month.
Yay! Now that's happiness.
Well, yeah, it could be. So, Augie, I know one of the things that makes you happy is playing drums, and you have a drum circle. You've talked to us about that before on the show. And another thing I know that gives you a great sense of happiness and success is monarch butterflies. I love butterflies.
Yeah, especially the monarchs. They're so beautiful.
Talk to us about how they give you happiness, a sense of success, but also sadness.
And the sadness is quite appropriate. I was first turned on to their life cycle by my college microbiology professor, Dr. Teresa Palos. I was at the time a nursing major, and I, being an older student, noticed all this activity on some milkweed on campus. And so she saw me outside of her office window noticing this while younger students were going about and on their phones and what have you. So she came out and told me, this is why I love older students, right? They notice things. And so after a short conversation, I thought, well, okay, I can get in on this. And it's certainly much easier than adopting a whale or an elephant in a faraway land. And so I started raising them, but also because I was a science major, I had to look at the data and look at the whole symbiosis of monarchs in their natural setting and the different settings, right? What happens with the monarchs in upstate New York are different than what happens with those in Florida or Colorado. And so in order to reduce the natural sadness, which comes from watching them not succeed what that means to bloom so that they can start their migration, I had to accept the fact that in the natural state, they only have about a 1% chance of surviving all the way to the migration point. And that's excluding, right, the stressors on their habitat by agriculture and whatnot. That's just what happens in a healthy population. And so in realizing this, I understood then as I started raising them that if I get a 50, on a good clutch, maybe 85% success rate, then in watching them develop, it reminds me very much so, and I never get tired of it. It reminds me that I am beholden to the very same energies that help them develop, right? A certain amount of sunshine, there's a certain amount of nutrition, there's a certain amount of mortality that just comes with them. And, you know, you have to, in releasing them, it is an affirmation of my place on the planet. That say, okay, this is right, this is what you have done, and you now have to part with it. And so in this way, it's interesting. I find it is it's also a reminder for me that happiness can be a transient state, right? And I also know that depending upon the endeavor, right, one can be quite successful and not glean any happiness out of it at all. Mm-hmm. But I think on the flip side of that same coin, at least we understand that we can know happiness without having to succeed at anything.
Which is nice, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, with the butterflies, I mean, you get much happiness because you're continuing on. You know, you're assisting them.
Sure. I was I gave a proposal to the local city council about 3 years ago to put a monarch butterfly habitat on the backside of our main library branch.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Oh, it was so wonderful. But because, right, city councils, like all governmental bodies, move at kind of a snail's pace. Mm-hmm. I first gave the proposal, the mayor who surfs with the chief of police, that's just the type of coastal city that we live in, he thought it was a wonderful idea. But then I didn't hear back from them after about 6 months. So I changed the date of my proposal. I went back down to the city council, and it was going to be completely funded by a nonprofit. So the city didn't have to do a thing. They just had to green light it. Now, I had presumed, as naturally occurs in city councils, that they say, yes, that's a good idea. We will agendize it for next month. Come back. And so I was prepared for this response. However, you know, knowing how they work, I had my prepared text. I gave copies to the city clerk, who then passed them all out to all of the city council members sitting at the dais. And I just read verbatim, you know, what my proposal was. And the mayor, much to his credit, he shot his finger at me. He goes, I remember this. We were talking about this a long time ago. And he was like looking, he said, yes, make it happen. So he points at the city manager and says, make this happen. And so they agreed to it right there. And so the gallery behind me where everybody was sitting, it was full because prior to my presentation, they were passing out some civic awards to first responders. And so, you know, after the mayor said, make it happen, right, the gallery just exploded in applause. And I turned around and I took a humble bow.
That's happiness.
Yeah, I collected my things and left, and I was met by the city manager in the foyer. And he said, so show me what you're talking about. So it's literally just outside the building and around the corner. We couldn't have traveled more than 100 feet to what I was talking about. And he said, okay, yeah, why don't you write up your plan? And, you know, we'll get back with you as soon as possible. And so this is again where my science major had to come in, because I know that a proposal is not the plan. So, but right, the main library is right there. So I go into the library the next day and I check out books on drawing landscaping blueprints. I get the square footage of the area. And here's the other thing. With Google Earth, I could do a overhead shot of the library and print it out. And so I then did because again, as a science major, I had to do a soil analysis where you can get the soil analysis kits at Home Depot. So I showed them what the condition of their soil was, and I showed them the condition of what healthy milkweed soil should look like. And even upon a glance, right, there's a difference between kind of gray, light brown, sandy loam compared to what a healthy compost pile soil would look like. And so within my report, I had to let them know that I will have to raise the pH of the soil a full click. I will be putting in this, I think it was something like 600 square feet of conditioning soil. I would have to wait a couple of weeks before I went back and retested the soil. And so what happens is all this time that there's a wonderful term that I read in it was a Zen booklet on martial arts. And the lesson in this short story was conquer your haste, right? Conquer your haste. And so I realized that, okay, Augie, the natural world just flows through time, just like you. And I can no more rush this soil conditioning any more than I can wish to be a year older today, right? It's just not going to happen. Fortunately, the gods were with me. And about 4 days before I was set to recheck the soil, we got a weather forecast that said we were going to have about 3 days of rain. So I quickly shot an email off to the Director of Public Works, Ted Simon. He's a good man, and Mayor Bill Brand, and said, I got to do this right now. So I show up in a friend's borrowed truck with all these plants, and all the city could do was have some city maintenance workers carry this 2,000 pounds of soil over to the site. After that, I was on my own. Now, I knew that, okay, this is going to be like a 4 water bottle day, and it's just me. And even though I knew that you're going to be sore from this, because this was 2 years ago, I just turned 58 back in February. So I like have to, right? Don't hurt your back, right? I had a smile on my face the whole time because I realized within this labor, I was going to be doing something that would benefit the whole city. And indeed, in my presentation, I made it clear, if we do not make this habitat such that it inspires our children to be more curious, and if we do not inspire them to also understand this life process and help out monarch butterflies, then we're just spinning our wheels, right? Yeah. And so that's what that led to. And so now, maybe a couple of times a week, I'm down there doing maintenance. I have a dear friend by the name of Dave Sato who also helps out. And now, again,
is this a sanctuary where the children can go in there and walk through the butterflies?
The city would prefer they didn't literally get in it, but the beauty of the way to set up is there's the primary nursery bed. That's about 680 square feet. And then off that patio, they have these very large, unused, by the way, at the time, concrete pots that you could have put a ficus in and it would have been just fine. So we also have plants in there. And it's great because we didn't know where the monarchs were going to be. And they literally just crawl out of the concrete pot and anchor their chrysalises right there around it.
Right around it.
You can witness this from inside the library, or you can walk out and take a look at it. So it has to be hands-on. You have to be able to visualize it.
Okay. The reason I was asking is
question, Augie.
Sure.
Augie, I have a question for you. Did you in all of this make a nice YouTube video that we can share with the world? Because this is the kind of project that makes the world better.
Well, and most certainly it has opened people's eyes to what they can accomplish for themselves.
But is there a YouTube video? So that's in your city. The people in your city can go to your library. but I'm thinking about the people in my city, in my library, and Monica's.
Sure.
Yeah. So did you make some kind of a YouTube, or is there something that you've created that we can perhaps give the links to?
Fortunately, what I would do is, because again, I am a citizen scientist, there is an organization called the Xerces, Xerces, Xerces Society for the Support of Invertebrates.
Mhm.
And they put out a great amount of research papers on all invertebrates, particularly butterflies.
If Augie's love for doing this and excitement about doing this has turned you on, Monica's going to post a link in the show description to that organization. And please think about, now for you, obviously, Augie, happiness, one of the sources of greatest happiness for you is being in sync with nature, being part of that world around you. And of course, I mentioned earlier, you drum and you
Yes.
have this drumming circle. And of course, again, we're talking about being one with the rhythm of life around you. So that's one way I think people can be very happy. I'm not as much of a scientist as you are. I'm more of a word person, a hearing kind of. So I find myself often just sitting down and listening to music and enjoying that. That gives me a sense of happiness.
Sure.
Monica, what do you do to be in tune with the world?
Well, of course, I love music, but what makes me happy is actually creating things for others. So whether it be writing, Ken, or doing pastel work or whatever. I can do. That's what it makes me feel good when I can create something that brings pleasure to someone else. Now, it's not a bunch of money. People might say, well, you're not successful, you're not making a ton of money out of this, but to me, success is not money.
Well, now you just made the bridge over there, Monica, from happiness and success. Those are two different things, I think. Happiness is perhaps more internal, and success is perhaps more external. Like, for example, raising the butterflies, being with the butterflies is happiness. Getting the town government to say, hey, let's get it done is success. For me, when I come up with an idea or I get the rhythm of something I'm writing, I'm particularly very, again, preoccupied with the rhythm of words, that gives me happiness. When the book is finally published, it's success, of course. And then the question is, how much do we need other people to be part of that sense of success? So one of the things that struck me, Augie, was you mentioned you have one friend who helps you. But what was striking to me was you didn't mention, for example, having a Boy Scout troop involved or getting an Eagle Scout to creating this their project. Getting other people involved seems less important to you than what you do internally. It's interesting. The three of us, I think, are in many ways somewhat introverted that way. Success for me is not, yes, hey, folks, don't get me wrong. I want you to buy my books. Sure. I want you to buy Monica's books, but I want you to buy Monica's pastels, things like that. But what's more important is the creating. The success is in the creating. So what do we call it when we get that feedback from other people? What does that mean to you, Augie?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned it's true. I think that there are some wonderful opportunities for budding Eagle Scouts and Girl Scout troops to put in their own monarch butterfly habitats. That would most certainly earn them what they so strongly deserve. But these types of things that are, what's the word, community outreach type of activities, I do them as the administrator at the Moose Lodge anyway, which is about 4 blocks from where the habitat is located. And we were just talking about, how much does it take? I am very much the minimalist. I haven't owned a car in over 10 years. Everything I need to do, I can walk to, and I do. The grocery store is 2 stone throws away from where I am at right now. My job as the administrator at the Moose Lodge, a very, very large nonprofit, is a 13-minute walk, right? And so my life, and I passed the school that I went to kindergarten in, right? And so I realized about 15 years ago, Jenny and I, we've been together 30 years, so we don't have any children. I was still, I'm always looking for a higher spiritual plane. And 15 years ago, I could not reconcile that with having a sports car and a sedan, and Jenny had her car. And I thought, well, what am I thinking, right? I mean, part with one of these things, Augie. And so I slowly began to chip away at those things that left maybe a bigger carbon footprint for Augie Garnier than he really wanted. Mm-hmm. And, in my younger days, I would run marathons, the LA Marathon, right? And so walking didn't bother me at all. Or taking the bus, right? During the pandemic, right? All of the buses in Los Angeles County are free. You just have to have a mask on. And so utilizing public transportation, but in the end, I simply could not reconcile wanting to accumulate material things with my obvious understanding that if I'm looking for a higher spiritual plane, then I don't need that much.
And this is what I'm talking about. Success, happiness. I think that we are groomed as children and taught that certain things are successful and other things are not. Unfortunately, success normally comes with either notoriety, money, power. To me, that's not success, especially if you learn how a lot of people got to that success. To me, I would rather see children, see what their natural talents are, what they love to do in life, what they were given when they were born. And why not have them, work towards that goal to be that person, whether it be art, music, it could be being a brain surgeon, anything. Each person's success to me is different, and it seems like we have everything built upon this little, stepping ladder.
Well, maybe the 3 of us are on to something, or maybe we're the oddballs. Things that give us a sense of meaning, things that give us a sense of connection, are more important than things of the material things.
Right.
Now, folks, we are not saying, you will notice Monica is using a background, so we don't really see where she lives. But we see in Augie's case, he has a nice screen behind him. You can see on the wall behind me the
that's real.
Navajo masks.
I'm in my dining room.
Yeah. I mean, we're not saying live without things, right, any more than Augie would say to those monarch butterflies, spin your cocoons without the milkweed, is it? Plants. We know that the environment matters. We're all on computers.
Sure.
We all have computers. We're not saying live without things.
No.
We are saying that the things are less important than the spirit, the connection, the valuing. So for us, I think success and happiness are about being true to our connection to the world.
Mhm. I would agree.
Now, I know, I as you know, and many of you guys know, and of course, many of our listeners know, I grew up, I went to a very fancy boarding school for which my parents paid a great deal of money. I didn't, then I went to an Ivy League university where my parents paid a great deal of money. I grew up knowing some of the richest people in this country. I actually have been to homes where dinner was served by butlers wearing livery. And I have to tell you that I never felt that stuff mattered a lot. I think that when we get right down to it, the thing that matters to me, things that matter to me are connection to the world, connection to other people, love, a sense of sharing, a sense of beauty. Oh, so much a sense of beauty and a sense of giving. Whether it was my career as a therapist, helping people, or teaching, which I also did. But for me, it has always been one of the things that has brought me the greatest happiness is seeing others' lives get better from their contact with me.
Sure.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I always told people that I don't want you to learn this job and be as good as me. I want you to be better than me. That's my goal.
Let us leave the world better for our being in it. Let us leave other people better for their having been with us in our space. And let us always strive to not despoil. That's the other thing. And Augie, you really represent that. I mean, you keep your carbon footprint to a minimum, which I love.
Yes.
I can't say I'm as good at that as you anyway.
I try. But
I love the fact, recently Roz and I, realizing that we are getting old, I guess my turning 80 was a point for me.
Yeah.
We decided that to start giving away. When I actually had to move my father out of his condo in Florida, and he went into a nursing home, and my wife and I got the job of cleaning out this space. And there was so much stuff that I was hauling stuff down the hallway to the dumps. They had a chute down to the dumpster, hauling and hauling and hauling. And then, kind of garage sale. And then, somebody came in to look over and see what they could sell. And I'm saying to my wife and I said to ourselves, we don't want that. We don't want to burden our son that way. So what we did was we started calling friends and saying, come for dinner. And we have stuff for you. We have stuff for you. We didn't say what. And then they come and we'd walk them through and say, you see this painting? And some of these, Roz's paintings are quite good. And my wife would say, I want this painting to go to a home. I don't want it just being on this wall and then having David have to decide. Take it if you like it. And so, we had all these very nice dishes that I had loved, I had bought. I'm the one, I have to admit, I bought these handcrafted ceramic dishes. I loved them. I thought they were beautiful. Yeah, they were. We said to these people, we have a box here. We have the bubble wrap. All we need is your agreement that you're going to give these a home and use them.
Yeah.
Sure.
I never could have not being used. course, I learned real fast about material things after the fire. It was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
just wipe it all away at once.
There's nothing like losing everything to
I
remind you
know.
how little. And the worst part is, of course, the stuff you really value, the stuff that has all those memories and that you really don't want to just part with, the stuff that should be there and maybe then passed on to your children or
Yeah.
whatever.
Those are the
But
things.
those are very few things.
But I found Carrie's book,
Yes, you were
so I'm
telling me.
so happy. See, little things like that bring me so much pleasure now and happiness.
Yes. So that's another form of pleasure, huh? Memories. What is let's go very quickly before we start. I want you to go back in your mind to something out of your life, your memory, that thinking back on it gives you incredible pleasure.
Who do you want to answer?
Huh?
Well, what gave me pleasure was to perform on stage, because, especially in the round, because you have an immediate connection with people. You get that immediate giving to them of entertainment, and you feel the joy back. I don't know how you can beat it.
Mm-hmm. Augie?
You know, the older I got, the more I realized how important this singular moment was for me in third grade. I was attending at Jefferson Elementary School, which is just about 4 blocks to my right. And over a spring break, one of our classmates, sadly, her brother had drowned over that holiday at the Kern River. And one of my older brothers happened to be on that trip with this group of friends. 2 of them got caught in a current. One swam to the bank, turned around and said, reached his hand out for his friend, and he was not there. Well, as children are not developed yet, right? This girl was not very popular to begin with. And what happened is I started showing some creative skill back then, right? I think I won my first art contest in first grade. So I was doing these drawings, and what happened is some of the people who were saying these horrifically unkind things, right? Children can't know how hurtful it is. They were asking me for these drawings that I was spitting out, and I stopped doing them for them. And I said, this last one is for her, and that's it. No more. And I realized I was doing what my parents had always invoked, right? You keep the person's dignity. And what that did was that not only showed empathy, but it also showed the bullies that I know the difference between where she's at and where you're coming from. And so as I grew up and I understood and I got a little more science under my belt, I realized that was the moment that gene for empathy kicked in, right? Kicked into overdrive, and it was never going to go back. And so it was actually quite fortuitous, because that was the same year that I started training in martial arts. And I still teach today, right? I've been doing this now. I've been doing this now for 50 years, right? Teaching martial arts. Well, I've been teaching since 1976, but privately, right? I don't belong to a dojo. Mm-hmm. I can pick and choose my own students. I never charge a dime. But what I realized was that, for me, my training in martial arts was empathy had to be part of it. And my school, the affiliate school, they didn't compete because they know that trophies get dusty. They didn't have a belt system. Their abiding philosophy was simply that so that you can walk the planet with greater confidence as a human being, mm-hmm. You're not doing it to compete, because eventually you will lose. What you're doing it such that people around you realize that, okay, right, this is not so much that he has these really great defensive skills, but really it was a matter of, no, because he understands the spiritual responsibility that goes with the skill. And so I look back on that moment of just drawing pictures, right, for my classmates and deciding that, okay, this bullying stops, right? It's got to stop right now.
That's
And
wonderful.
so the further away I get from that memory, it's not like if we had a good high school memory, right? As I tell some of the kids at Redondo High School, I was an alumni president for years. I tell them, this might sound cheesy, but I mean it. The further away you get from this experience, the more value it will have.
Very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
How about you, Ken?
Oh, gosh, I guess if I were to pick one memory that really has stuck with me, and this is kind of a sad thing. When I was about 13, I was taking clarinet lessons with a fairly famous clarinetist, classical clarinetist, and he was also the conductor of a conservatory symphony, and he had to prepare for a concert, and he wanted the right to make his own batons. He always did. And he asked me to accompany him through the city of Boston, looking for the proper dowels to make the baton with.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that you have to understand is that I was very alienated from my father, well, both my parents really. And so when this man invited me to do this, he didn't know anything about my family. I mean, I didn't know.
Right.
But when he did this, it was such an affirmation that I could be worth something, that somebody would want my company and would want me to be involved in some way. Well, we ended up walking for hours and finally did find the doweling he wanted. And he did make it, and I did go. By the way, my brother and I both went to the concert. And it was the first actual concert that I went to. It was classical music, Kids, they always say, what was your first? But the thing is that it just was so affirming of me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That had to make you feel so good. Yeah. That
Well,
was important.
So, hey, Augie, thank you so much for joining us on Chats and Friends.
Anytime.
I think the three of us could probably talk for another hour, but I don't know that our listeners would be able to listen for that.
I'll leave the audience wanting more.
That's right. Augie, thank you so much. Come back again. And we have a little something for you to listen to right now. So here you go, folks. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.